So yeah, we'll go on to, we both watched the first episode of season 2. I watched it this morning. I think you watched it yesterday, didn't you?
Yeah.
What were your thoughts on it?
So it's hard for me to talk about this first episode without going into spoilers for the story, because so much of what I like and dislike about it is tied to how it differs from the game.
Yeah, we can do a little spoiler section sort of at the end of our episode 2 review.
All right, we'll put a big spoiler banner, an alarm clock, something, people can skip ahead. But yeah, so generally my opinion is that the second season has the opportunity to fix a lot of the problems that I found with part 2. My main problem with part 2, as I probably already said, is pacing. The way the story is told, the way the story develops, it flows, how we keep flashing back and forward, changing perspective. That is really frustrating in the game, especially because you are existing as that character, and then control is taken away from you and you are experiencing something else entirely. And I think the show has the opportunity to tell that same story, with a few minor changes, but in a more effective way. And it seems to me like they are already doing this, because again, without going into any spoilers just yet, but it looks like they're telling events in a more of a chronological order, where like the game starts with this bang and then we flash back to some of the moments that we've already seen play out here in the show. Like some of the stuff that we see in this first episode, you don't see in the game until the end of the game. So I think that's gonna go a long way into making the story a bit tighter, a bit stronger, a bit easier to follow. And also, we establish Abby at the very beginning, and most importantly, we establish their mission. That's very different, because in the game, we don't really know what their deal is for the first few hours of the game, and then stuff happens that we won't go into, but their objective is revealed. But now, exactly like the first scene in the new show, is establishing their mission. They want to kill Joel. And I think that creates tension. Based on this premise, I'm guessing the events are going to play out a bit differently. And I am super down for that.
Yeah. And where's Abby's muscles?
I mean, they toned it down because there's no human being who looks like that.
There's toning it down, and there's like, I mean, she's so tiny. She's like the character who portrays Abby in this series is.
I mean, we haven't seen her without the coat. Maybe in those 5 years she built some muscle.
You think she's packing under there? Do you?
Yeah, I don't know. We'll see. I'm fine with the change, honestly.
I think you're right. It's good they're establishing the motives of this group straight away.
Yeah.
And I actually, when the episode started, I was like, wait, actually, I need to go back and watch the last episode, because I was like, maybe we've been introduced to these characters already, because it was really throwing you straight into it. But they hadn't. And immediately, I was already slightly put off in this first scene, though.
Okay.
I cannot stand it. And I was thinking this about, when we were talking about Alien Romulus as well. I cannot stand it when there's these characters or these actors in series, especially post-apocalyptic stuff, and all their hair and makeup is like perfectly done. They look, they all look pristine. They all look like actors. They all look like models.
Yeah, they look nice.
Abby's crew in the beginning, it's like, oh, these are the Vogue runway models or something like that. It is like, I don't believe them to exist in this post-apocalyptic world. And yeah, like I said, this is a similar issue I had with Romulus when it introduces these teenagers, and they do that silly thing where they put a little bit of dirt on their face, and it's like, well, hey, yeah, they're tough and they're grizzled.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying. I want to be fair. I want to try to be fair. To the show, that maybe like these are, as you said, they are teenagers. They live in Salt Lake City, and up until Joel came, this is probably was a very safe space for them. They were the sons and daughters of these fireflies who Joel slaughtered. These are characters who are at this time in the story not really versed in fighting. I guess I agree that they look too nice.
It's just a simple costume design element most of the time, and obviously casting helps too. And hey, we've only seen these characters for 2 scenes so far in the first episode. They could totally warm on me, but immediately that was like my first thought. I was like, these kids look like they're straight off the Hollywood set. Do you know what I mean? I didn't believe them as survivors of this post-apocalyptic world. And then we have our next scene. We're back with Joel, and we have him. I think he's fixing like a circuit breaker or something. And Dina comes in and chats to him. Now, I want to ask you: is this
I like Dina.
Dina's cool? Is this part of the games? Does Joel go through therapy in the game?
Oh my God! So I have some random thoughts that I wrote down while I was watching, and one says Joel going to therapy is good and bad at the same time. And no, it wasn't in the game.
I didn't think it was. So
No, it wasn't in the game, and neither was his relationship to Dina, who is now someone that he relies on because Ellie doesn't talk to him. So, and these are fine additions. I guess it's good that this lady can practice even when society has fallen.
yeah, this
But
again is
it's weird.
like we've mentioned. There's a big softening of Joel's character. It was in season 1, and it feels like they are really highlighting that in the beginning of season 2. We've already seen him crying in this therapy session. He's alluding that he's also ashamed of having therapy as well to Dina, and he goes to this therapy session with Kevin McAllister's mum from Home Alone.
Oh yeah, that was what's her name?
Something I can't remember her name actually. Catherine something.
Christine O'Hara.
Oh, Christine O'Hara.
Something
that's it.
O'Hara.
Yeah. Catherine O'Hara. That's it. Yeah, who's a good actress, but he goes to, he pays her a bag of weed for this therapy session, and she ends up sitting there and scolding him till he cries.
Because he killed her husband, because I guess he was infected and he had to,
He
shoot
should
him.
be like, bitch, I paid you for this session. Don't be trauma dumping on me.
Okay. Yeah, no, I get that. I don't know. It was weird when the scene started and I understood what was happening. Everything that is new jumps as being an addition, and you need to figure out if that addition works, what it adds to the story, what it detracts from the story. And I think the world the show is set in is brutal post-apocalypse. And I understand that Jackson is kind of like a safe haven, so people are living their lives almost normally.
Yeah.
And there's space for therapy, there's space for exploration of grief. And it's good that Joel is trying to better himself in this way. He clearly carries a lot of guilt for what he did, even though I think he believes he did the right thing.
Oh yeah, but that's I feel like that's very obvious within his character, and I feel like this having him actually do therapy is not very subtle in exploring that.
Yeah, they could have had a scene where he talks to his brother over a drink, like I think happens in the game. And I think you could have a way more powerful scene if the character that Joel is confessing this stuff to is someone we know, someone we care about, like Tommy, not just a random therapist who scolds him.
Yeah, exactly. It's such a weird choice, and I'm not sure whether maybe this is in the next scene we get with Joel. He is he's planning, he's looking at some maps, and Tommy's wife comes over to him, and
oh, I have a note on this.
She fucking scolds him again, and it's like, oh my god, is this just like the shit on Joel episode? And he's like, he's saying very,
everyone hates him.
Yeah, he's saying very practical and real things. It's like, hey, we have a small settlement and very limited resources. We can't just let everybody in, and it's already stressed that they are at almost capacity and they're struggling to build housing for these people. But then Tommy's wife comes in, who's, I guarantee in every scene that she's in, she's going to be right about everything. And she comes in, she's like, remember, Joel, you were a refugee once too. And it's like, yeah, I get what you're trying to say, but it's like, he also has a completely valid opinion.
And I have another note here because I just rewatched season 1, right? And in season 1, when Joel and Ellie get to Jackson, they run into Tommy's wife first, and she isn't even sure she wants to let them in. She has gone from, I don't want anyone in this colony because we have limited resources, to all of a sudden now it's like, hey, Joel, have a little heart. These refugees need our help. And I find that frustrating. Like, you can't change a character.
Yeah, and you know, obviously they're having the discussion between them two. You know, the show is telling us that she's right in this opinion as well.
Yeah.
It totally feels that way. And also, so well, in between those scenes, we had, which is a scene I actually quite liked, was Ellie learning Brazilian jiu-jitsu.
Oh,
And
yeah.
she's practicing jiu-jitsu on these guys, and she's a little beaten up. I always like it when, especially if you've got a character who's, you know, not very strong or physical in stature, you have to tell us how she beats these people in hand-to-hand combat. You can't just expect that we would believe that, I think. And even if they're not necessarily physical in stature, you should always see people learning these skills, you know, whether they go out hunting and they're practicing their shooting, or whether they're practicing their hand-to-hand combat. So I actually really like this scene. But then also at the end, she catches the guy in an armbar and she doesn't let go. She's basically potentially going to snap this guy's arm. And again, I feel like the show is trying to be like, oh, isn't she so cool? She doesn't let go of the
I mean,
submission.
they need to establish her as a fucking badass because she is gonna do things in this season.
Oh, totally. And that's why you set her up as learning jiu-jitsu and stuff like this. But showing her not releasing the submission on the guy, and she's like, oh, you know, whatever. And the guy's like, stop, stop, stop. He tapped out. And if you do that in a jiu-jitsu competition, you're a fucking dick.
Yeah.
And it makes her very unlikable.
I think we'll see what happens with Ellie this season. I'm very curious to see it because I think it's the point to show her as being a little bit of a dick. She's being a dick to everyone.
Yeah.
She's being a dick to Joel. You know, she's not being a dick to Dina because she wants to fuck her.
Yeah. And is that something in the beginning of the game, after we pick up of, you know, what's happened at the end of the first one, is that something that Ellie's character is going through? Is she very much like that in the game too at the beginning?
I mean, she's a 19-year-old teenager who has very repressed trauma, I guess. So, yeah, she does lash out from time to time. I think it's more of an unrequited rage, like kind of like bubbling up inside. It's less on the surface like it is in this rendition of the character. It's a little bit more subtle. But again, the subtlety comes from the fact that the game can indulge in a lot of moments that we probably will not see in the show. You know, moments that are just pure gameplay of maybe two characters chatting while you are solving a puzzle, and you kind of like go into this character's psyche a little bit more. Here, they need to, right out of the gate, show you, okay, Ellie has grown up. She has issues. She has issues with Joel that we need to get into, and she is prepared for the world out there, the dangerous world out there. She's able to take care of herself, not like in the first game and show.
And like it is correct for her character. You know, they've set this up in season 1. She has only killed a few people up until the point when she breaks out of the cannibal group. That's the first time she really goes on a bit of like a murderous spree. And that's, you know, as a teenager that would affect you completely, and it makes sense why she's got such hardened edge in the beginning of this episode. But you can do characters with that hardened edge and they still come across as likable.
Yeah.
For some reason, she's really unlikable in this first episode, and I get that's kind of the point, but you can still enjoy a character that's unlikable.
Yeah, show her have fun a little bit more. You know, like you show her play the guitar and
Yeah.
do some stuff that we like about Ellie. You know, maybe be nice to the horse. You know, do something with the horse. I don't know. Yeah, because the horse, is in the game, is Shimmer.
But it's so true though. You could give one scene of her like affectionately petting that horse, and it's like, oh, there you go.
Yeah.
There's the Ellie that we know.
Yeah, I don't know. It's a very difficult season for Ellie and for Bella Ramsey. She worked in the first season, as I said. I really liked her performance, and I hope she'll work in the second season. She has proven that she's a great actor, but she needs to pull off a level of brutality and a level of like depth in the way she feels about stuff that we'll see if she can carry that, because it's a very difficult character to develop that way.
Yeah, it's gonna be tough, and it's not a side we've necessarily seen from Bella Ramsey's performance yet. So it's gonna be like a bit of a make or break for that character, I feel like. And then so we get Ellie desperately wanting to go on the next recon patrol. You know, she's practicing her shooting with Tommy, and she manages to convince him to go out on their next patrol, which is something she's obviously very keen on doing. There's, many people in this community. There's, they're overloaded, in fact, and they can't even house these people. And on our patrol, we have 2 adults and 3 teenagers. And
Yeah.
again, thought that was a bit silly. You have these 2 guys who are the only ones who look like the adults on this patrol, and they don't say a fucking thing. They just sit back and they're like, the one guy says one thing. He's like, "Are you gonna let her do this?" And it's like, you could probably do something about it too, buddy. I think you've probably been on many a patrol in your life. So,
Dude, they just put them there so that people like you wouldn't complain, or they're just sending 2 teenagers to do the
I
patrol,
know.
and you're complaining anyway.
Because it's even worse if you just chuck them in as fucking cannon fodder, because it doesn't make any sense.
Oh man.
And the whole situation in the house when Dina and Ellie go in to sort of explore what's happened.
The little supermarket.
Yeah, they all just stay outside the whole time. There's no aiding from them at all. I just thought that was also a bit silly.
I mean, it was a little bit silly, but it led to the best fucking scene in the whole episode. I was nerding out when I realized what they were doing because, if you play the game, you know that they steadily introduce new classes of zombie.
Yeah.
Let's call them zombie in the game. And the Stalker is a motherfucker that is introduced in part 2. And it was so well done. Like the way you see the silhouette of this.
It like scuttles across the top of the aisles at the beginning, doesn't it? It's great.
And you realize, oh wait, it's not just attacking. It's a stalker. I was like, oh, it literally I was like, oh, it's a stalker. And then they have the scene later when they're explaining, and it's like, oh, it was like stalking. I was like, you didn't need that. We got it. But like,
Yeah.
it was so cool, and the makeup was so well done. I don't know, man. That sequence was fucking amazing.
Again, like we said, when the clickers are in it, the tension is so high, and what the show should be doing.
Yeah.
And just before we get more into that, there was a scene just before that, which was actually probably my favorite bit of the episode, where Dina and Ellie are sort of silently discussing their plans. And Dina's like,
Yeah.
we'll go up behind and we'll stab one of them. And they start doing like a funny, like pretending to stab their own necks and like fake dying. And that, like, again, that's where Ellie's charm really comes out.
The personality comes out, and Dina is also really good.
Yes.
I think the actor playing her really, really pulls it off.
Yeah, that one little moment kind of sold me on their friendship already at this point, and I really appreciated that. Well, I didn't really understand the bit where she throws the bottle to distract the clicker.
Yeah, that's a game moment.
I know, I get that, but then she throws the glass bottle to distract the clicker, and then she just walks over the broken glass.
Yeah, that was
making loads of noise.
That wasn't, like, that's not how I did it in the game, but I am, I'm very good at the game. You throw the bottle away so they go somewhere else, and then you do your thing.
Yeah, I mean,
you either
that's the logical thing to do. Of course, you don't throw the noise-making thing at your feet to then make more noise.
Yeah, but the clicker was distracted enough that she was able to jump on it and stop it. So I guess it worked out. But yeah, the logistics.
It was weird. I thought it was almost like a mistake that she made. It was like, oh, she didn't throw it far enough or something, but then she's successful anyway at taking out the clicker. Like, so I don't know.
And I was expecting Dina to do something, and then she just comes after.
And they do a close up on her feet cracking on the glass, and it's like, oh, okay, she's fucked up. She didn't throw it far enough, and now the clicker's going to turn around and attack her. But then she just jumps on his back and kills it. I thought that was a really weird setup for a scene. That one.
Yeah, that's true. I didn't really catch that in the moment, but yeah, that's a very good point. But yeah, this leads to her falling through the floor, and then the stalker sequence, which again, as I said, was amazing. That's the kind of fan service that I love. It's not there just to appease fans of the game. It's there because it services a story. You're introducing a new threat that they're going to have to deal with in the show, and it's super well done.
Hopefully, this is setting up that we are, the Stalker is going to become a big threat in this season, and we are going to get more clicker scenes. Hopefully,
I mean, if they do all the monsters that we run into the game, well, I guess that's more of a season 3 thing, but like there's an infected coming who's absolutely terrifying.
I think I know. Is it the Rat King one?
Yeah, the Rat King.
Man, yeah, that That could be cool.
Yeah, I can't wait for them to adapt that.
Yeah, and like you said, we got the bloater in season 1, and that scene was epic as well. And then if you get the first introduction of the clickers, and now we get the stalker, like, yeah, they need to be focusing a bit more on that stuff. And I get it, that probably makes the show so much more expensive, and they've got to weave those scenes in sporadically. But that's such a large part of the show.
You know, there's a lot of stuff that I appreciated from the game. You know, you mentioned that bit where Tommy is teaching Ellie how to use the sniper rifle.
Yeah.
And that's like an entire sequence that you play as Ellie in the game. It's a tutorial basically. And it's nice that they reference it, even though, you know, the setting is different and what happens in it is different. You know, it's just a conversation, but they clearly want to pay homage to those little moments. And, you know, again, the bottle, even though they used it wrong, all those things are there for us, for the fans of the game who are watching. And they also make sense for anyone who's watching who's not a fan of the game. You know, it hasn't played the game.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. And then what kind of happens after this bit? I know we maybe get the I think we get the sort of the barn dance kind of party.
So yeah, the barn dance, that is another sequence that was taken straight from the game.
Right.
It's, I think, one of the first trailers that they did for
So-
season for the game.
So the guy who comes in and he the obligatory homophobe, is that from the game then?
Yeah.
Okay, interesting.
But I don't think you see the scene, or well, you see it later because, again, you know, fractured timeline of events, that you see a moment and then you see the continuation of that moment 5 hours later. I guess it shows how I hate this in the game. But yeah, here they show the whole moment of the dance, and she dances with Dina, and then there's this guy kind of ruins the moment and calls him a bad word. And yeah, that's in the game too. I don't think it plays out exactly the same.
Is it-
I don't remember it.
Is it also a bit of a dumb scene in the game?
I mean, to be honest, I didn't find it that dumb. It makes sense that there would be an old man who is kind of like against same-sex love. He's drunk, it's a New Year's Eve party. He sees two young ladies smooching, and he's like, oh, this is a family event. I kind of get that the character like that would exist in this world. I mean, they exist in our world, so why wouldn't they exist in the post-apocalypse?
I mean, yeah, I get that. It's more, I mean, it's the choice to do the scene is rather, you know, I could totally
Yeah.
accept that
It's
people-
virtue
yeah.
signaling again.
It is, and I think, and it's not necessarily something that's going to play a massive role, other than the fact that I'm sure we're going
No.
to get Dina and Ellie's relationship that's going to flourish. But the fact that some people in the commune are homophobic, like, that's not going to play. It's just a scene, you know. Let's get this guy to say something homophobic and be like, yeah,
Yeah. He says something homophobic, and then Joel swoops in.
yeah, and we get another scolding for Joel here. It's the third one of the episode.
Don't protect me. Don't save my life. I don't need you. You suck. But yeah, like I found it interesting that I think in the game, again, I haven't played it in a while. I'm planning on replaying it after the show has ended. But I do believe that you get a few moments from Joel where he's trying to come to grips with the fact that Ellie is homosexual. And I thought that was a very interesting, because it would make sense. You know, he was a carpenter before, you know.
Whoa. Don't you fucking Jesus was a carpenter, bro. Don't you shit on carpenters.
I mean, like, I'm not saying, you know, like, it's just, it makes sense that someone like him who has led the life that he led would have, like,
yeah, I mean, isn't he from Texas, the character?
yeah, he's yeah.
Again, not not suggesting that all people from Texas are homophobic, but I get it. And you know, he's from that generation. It would, yeah.
Yeah, it's from the generation where maybe this thing was less, you know, discussed.
Yeah,
I mean, and it's a human moment to show him kind of like come to grips with this reality and trying to accept Ellie for who she is.
But they definitely wouldn't want to have that plot line with this version of Joel. This is a more sensitive version of Joel, and I don't think they'd want to paint him out in potentially that light.
The fact that he, you know, clearly just supports her, no questions asked, is a weakness, I think. I'm saying this not because I want to see it, but because it clearly is something that is important to the people making this show. If you want to address these kind of topics, then do it through your main characters. Don't throw a homophobic guy in a scene for 1 second.
Exactly.
So, it's an interesting topic of conversation.
Yeah, definitely. And there is a way to do that. And like you said, it should be through important characters, not little offhand comments, which will probably never be referenced again. Then we got this weird little shot, and I couldn't quite work out what was happening. We get like some of the cordyceps. Are they like in the water supply?
So
Is that what that was?
So basically, they make a point to show at the beginning of the episode that they are trying to rework some of the piping in Jackson. They ask Joel for help, and they show that there's like a bunch of vegetation growing through the pipes. So this links back to how they changed the cordyceps biology in the show compared to the game, right? Because in the game, it's just spores. You enter a room, there's a dead infected body, it releases spores, you breathe them, and you're dead. Or, well, you become an infected too. So, there's sequences in the game where you have to put on a mask,
Yeah.
and then the mask breaks, so you need to run. And there's a bunch of stuff that happens in the game that is not in the show. I guess they decided that it wasn't realistic enough, that people would be able to just walk around and not get infected, like the spores would be everywhere.
If it's airborne, it would be, it would seemingly be everywhere. I think that was a good change, to be honest.
Yeah, it was a good change. So they changed the way the cordyceps works, and there's this weird fungus that grows out of the infected mouth, and kind of like reaches out to infect everything else.
Yeah.
And you can see that there's like these roots, like these fungus roots. I don't know if that's the right definition, but like these roots are connected to the cordyceps. They are connected to the infected. So if like they make a point of establishing in the first season that if you stomp on a cordyceps root in one room, a cordyceps a mile away could hear you and come, eat you up. So I think, based on what they've shown us, that they are establishing the fact that these pipes contain the cordyceps. The cordyceps is going to feel the presence of humans in Jackson, and there's going to be a horde of infected coming there and attacking them, which is something that kind of happens in the game, but it's just like there's infected outside of Jackson, and you happen to be outside of Jackson, and you need to fight them off. But here, I think they're going to have to literally save Jackson from the infected, and in doing so, they'll run into Abby and her group, and that's how the story is going to kick in.
Yeah, okay, cool. I did. I was thinking, I was like, oh, right, because the water's passing through the cordyceps, is now the whole town going to get infected or something? And I was like, well, that sounds like it's going to
those
be...
pipes didn't have any water in it. Yeah,
No.
It was just an old pipe containing the cordyceps, kind of like spreading around.
Yeah, okay, cool. Yeah, I can see that being the case then. And then we get a cutback to Abby and her team of child soldiers going through the woods, and they get to the edge of a cliff, and they can see Jackson in the distance. And we do a nice little track in on Abby's face, and ooh, she's so scary.
Yeah, she's so scary. She's so angry.
Yeah. And then that was the end of that episode.
Really solid start. The controversial stuff is yet to come. We have to see how they're going to handle that. The beginning is easy. We're happy to be back in this world, back with these characters. Pedro Pascal is doing a great job, as always. He brings this softness to the character, which I think works when they're not pushing it, like, because, he's a psychopath. But
that's not the character, though. It's a different character to Joel in the games.
Yeah. I mean, I love Joel in the game. This is a different Joel. But I think Pedro's performance works for what it is. I think, all the characters are a little bit different.
Yeah, totally.
And that's fine. And I don't want the same thing. I have the game. I can play whenever I want.
See, you say that, but then the best scenes from season 1 are shot for shot, dialogue for dialogue.
Yeah, because those are the best scenes overall, because they're so well done, and they're so well performed and well written, and they make sense, and everything else is just adding up to that and making those moments shine. I know what you're saying. It's a story-driven game. If you want to adapt it, just make the same story. Like, it's not like Fallout, where you can just make up a new story in that world, and that works. It's not like Halo, even though Halo, I didn't watch it, and I don't think it was very good. Did they cancel that?
I think they've cancelled it, and I've I've seen so many like clips from that where like Master Chief is like butt naked and like having sex with people, and it's like, what is going on in this show?
Oh wait, that sounds good.
You see Master Chief's cheeks in it, his butt cheeks.
Master Cheeks.
Yeah.
Oh wow,
And you're
gotta
like,
love that.
and also he like barely ever has his helmet on. I think, you know, I'm never gonna watch
Oh
it,
man,
but
is this a Robert Downey Jr. Doom performance kind of thing?
But yeah, it's yeah, like you said, it's an adaptation. You know, it's really good. There's bits you can add which can really flesh out the characters' backstories. And actually, I was going to mention from season 1 when we are talking about sort of the Cordyceps and the different types of clickers that we get. I love the addition in season 1 where we're cutting, especially in the first few episodes, where we're cutting to the news stories.
Oh yeah,
We have the sort of panel talk show where we get the exposition of what the fungal infection is.
that's the cold open
Yes.
of the first episode. It's the actor from The Mummy
Yeah.
who plays
Jonathan something, I think.
Rachel Weisz's brother,
Yes.
Hannah something. Like yeah,
Oh yeah,
he's very good.
he's
He's
good.
very good. He plays this specialist and he explains what the fungus is and how it works. And I thought that was such a brilliant way to start the episode, to start the show. And we have spoken about The Last of Us for so long. We haven't mentioned Craig Mazin, who's the showrunner and the writer for most of the episodes of the second season, I think. He is the guy who made the Chernobyl miniseries.
Okay.
And he is, I think, is a great talent. It was a perfect pick for The Last of Us. And I think some of the issues that we have with the story are mostly Neil Druckmann, who's the games director. He has a very specific agenda that he clearly wants to push, and sometimes that's to the detriment of the story that he's telling.
Yeah.
And I think Craig Mazin is going to be the guy who kind of like reins him in. It's like, okay, you know, we love your story, but let's try to tell it a little bit better. You know, like let's put it in chronological order so that it makes sense and people are not frustrated. And yeah, so I think.
Did he also write the first season as well then? Craig
Yeah. He was the showrunner
Okay.
in season 1 too. So yeah, he is. I think he's the creative mind that will make this show, you know, the best show it can be. I don't know. We'll see what they do. You know, I think some of the changes that they've done we can attribute to him and his sensibility to, you know, storytelling.
Yeah. Well, it's going to be a tough job on this second season, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Because obviously, yeah, like we said, a lot of controversial moments didn't go down well in the game. Well, let's talk about. We'll get into a bit of a spoiler section here.
Yeah.
Because we know what happens in part 2 of the games. We can discuss what
Unfortunately,
we
we do.
Exactly. We can discuss what we think might happen in this second season. Yeah. So, do you want to start us off? I suppose our main topic is, you know, the main scene where Abby kills Joel with the golf club.
Yeah.
Do we think that's going to happen this season? Because Pedro Pascal is featured so heavily in the marketing of this show. Are they going to want to get rid of him? You know, I think maybe this is going to be the finale of this season, or they'll have a cliffhanger and leave it for season 3 so they can still use him to promote the next season.
Kind of like Walking Dead bat moment with
Negan, yeah.
Negan, yeah. Okay, so they've already said it's gonna be 3 seasons. I mean, there's gonna be a 3rd season, so it's pretty safe to assume part 2 is gonna be split into at least 2 parts. I mean, there's enough story there for 3 more seasons of this TV show. So I guess they can decide how much they want to adapt each time, but definitely 2 seasons. So yeah. The way they're telling the story makes me think that yes, probably what they want to do is to end on like a big cliffhanger moment, and that moment needs to be Joel's life being in danger. And I don't know, like I feel like you know, sometimes the fact that an actor is very popular puts a show or a movie in a weird spot where they don't really want to kill the actor, but even though it would service the story to kill the character, you know, like I'm thinking about Han Solo in the original trilogy of Star Wars. You know, he wanted to die in the second one, but then they brought him back and he did nothing in the third one. But I think the fact that Pedro Pascal is as popular as he is kind of works to the benefit of this show, because they want to have to keep him around for as long as possible. And I think even when what happens, we're going to still see him a lot, like in a bunch of flashbacks, a bunch of moments that inform Ellie's journey through her relationship to Joel. So yeah, I think now we're gonna get Abby's group running into Joel and Ellie and everyone at Jackson, I guess. And I think there's gonna be this tension that we have in the show thanks to that first scene that establishes that their goal is to kill Joel, which wasn't in the game, and I think that's a great improvement. But there's gonna be this tension where, for a few episodes at least, Abby is not gonna know that Joel is Joel, and she's gonna find out later, right? Because that's something that was kind of like on my wish list for the game. When I finished it, I was like, oh, I wish they did this, I wish they did that. Maybe, you can establish Abby as a character before making her do the most horrible thing that has ever been done. So the way they're going to do that, I think Abby's going to get to know Joel, get to know Ellie, maybe even develop a friendship of some sorts. And then, shit is going to go down. We're going to establish the WLF, the faction that they come from. Isaac is going to be one of the main villains of the season, I think. He's going to be played by Jeffrey Wright, who also plays him in the game, by the way, even though he's a very minor character and very inconsequential to the story. But I think they're going to beef up his role in this. So yeah, we're going to build up to a moment that's going to come later in the show, and the tension is going to come more from Abby's relationship to the characters and what happens when she finds out that Joel is Joel.
Yeah, you can certainly execute that moment better if you set up Abby's character before it happens.
Execute. Oh, wow. Was that intended? That was really good, man.
Yeah, we'll see. But you know what I was thinking when we were watching the first episode, though? I was like, because Joel's in it so little, unless we're going to get a very Joel-centric episode in the next one or two, maybe they are already establishing this is now going to be Ellie's show. And maybe that moment is going to happen sooner than we think. But yeah, I still do believe Pedro Pascal's too big of an asset to the show to lose.
There's another moment that they can use of kind of like a cliffhanger to transition into season 3, and that's the confrontation in the theater. We're talking about spoilers, so people know what I'm referring to. But I think that you run into the same issue that we had with the game. In the game, 2 hours in, Abby kills Joel. Everyone is very sad. Everyone is very angry. Ellie is very angry. And that works because, her anger is your anger. So you start playing the game thinking about revenge. Okay, I need to find this Abby motherfucker and fucking kill her. You embark on this journey with Dina, and then stuff happens. And you play this whole section. It's like 10 hours of gameplay as Ellie, and then you get to this theater, and that's where the confrontation with Abby happens. Not much of substance happens before that. You're just kind of like going place to place, finding clues to where Abby might be. You find one of her friends, you kill them because it's a miserable experience of a game, and then you find Abby. Abby finds you, and there's this confrontation in the theater, and then before you can see how that confrontation is resolved, you switch perspective to Abby. And you play as Abby on something that is almost completely unrelated to the story that you've just experienced for a good chunk, like another 10 hours, before you go back to that fucking moment in the theater. People hated that. I mean, I hated that. A lot of people hated that because, as I said, it's pacing. If you truncate a moment like that, and then force me to play as a different character doing a different thing, I'm not going to care that much because I want to go back to that moment. I want to go back to the character that I care about, and it's not going to work. I mean, it worked for some people. I respect that, but it didn't work for me. So I don't think they're going to do the same thing in the show of just getting to that moment and then be like, oh, I'll see you next year, because then people are going to be pissed off. Thinking about the story of the game and assuming that they haven't changed much of the story, I think the moment that you want to end on is Joel's death. Maybe changing a bit of what happens in the middle. There's going to be a different quest, a different storyline where Abby can kind of like grow close to Ellie and the other characters, and then...
Yeah. And like what you, because you mentioned the bit where we switch. You've done 10 hours of sort of with Joel and Ellie, and then we switch and we play as Abby in part 2. I saw somebody's done quite a good little compilation of Ellie's killing all these dogs. And then I think in that opening scene with Abby, she gets to pet the dog and be like really cute with the dog. And it's like, you are forcing me to really like this person. And the decision behind it, like Neil Druckmann's decision behind that is so bizarre. It's like, why would you shit on your legacy characters that made this what it was, and you'd happily just, rather be like, oh yeah, no, Abby's our favorite character now. That's how this story goes. It's like, no, you don't get to decide that, Neil Druckmann.
Yeah, no, people decide that. And Joel was my profile picture for like 5 years when I was a teenager. So I decided I like him more.
Exactly. Now your profile picture's Abby, isn't it?
Yeah, on every social media app. It's always been Abby and it always will be. No, but in all seriousness, I think the actress they chose has a very thankless job of kind of like bringing this character to life, because people are gonna just from the get-go hate her. And I don't hate the character. I think, the game makes you care about her towards the end. It's just so heavy-handed, and I'll get into that in my video. Again, little plug, but we'll see what they do with it.
Yeah, cool. So if you were to give the first episode a little score, obviously we're grading it on just an episode so far, but do you think it was a good return to the series?
I was happy to be back. It was interesting. I really loved all the little nods to the game and the recreation of some of the sequences. The ball was basically shot for shot. The way the camera pans down and shows Ellie kind of like watching over the room with all the lights. It's just beautiful imagery that it's translated almost shot for shot from the game. And all the new stuff works for the most part. I wasn't a huge fan of, Joel going to therapy, but I guess that's what he does. Tommy's wife, I find her a bit annoying
I
at the
also forgot
moment.
about the scene when Ellie and Dina, they're reporting back in the council meeting, and Tommy says, you weren't following the rules. You shouldn't have even gone into the building. And then Ellie or Dina goes, well, how is that different to you and Joel going in? And then Tommy's wife turns around and backs him up straight away. And she's like, yeah, how is that different, Tommy?
Yeah.
And it's like, oh my God. So you're now condoning these 19-year-old teenage girls who, one of them's going on their first patrol to go in headfirst into danger. It's like, you're an
Yeah,
idiot.
it's not
And
even.
again,
Yeah, I totally agree, because it makes no sense for her to be like, oh, girl power. Hey, yeah, like they can do anything a man can do. Yeah, I know, I guess, but like, a man would be in danger
and
in that situation too, so you should be worried.
and you can have statements like that and it works. Like, when Ellie and Dina are about to go into the building and Ellie says to Dina, oh, well, should we leave this for the men to do?
Yeah,
That makes sense.
that's a good moment because she wants to be that. Like, she wants to be
She's
as.
always trying to prove herself. Yeah. Whereas the council, Tommy's wife, she should be more of a protective role and
Yeah.
should be more sensible and adult. And it's like, no, Tommy and Joel can do these things because they've been on many patrols and, they've proven themselves as great, great warriors.
And they've gruesomely killed a bunch of people. So
yeah, and it was like you said, it was a girl power moment, and it's like, why is this in the show? Oh,
girls get it done.
yeah,
And it's so unnecessary. I like these characters, as they are. I don't need to be reminded of their gender like it's something like a badge of honor. It's strange that they keep needing to do this, but I guess, it pays off.
I can only hope Tommy's wife does not appear in too much of the rest of the series because, oh my God,
They're going to be away from Jackson for most of it, so I believe we're safe.
She is grating on me. I liked the first episode of the second season.
Oh, sorry, you asked me for a grade and I just went
Yes.
on a fucking tangent. But like my grade, yes, it's like a 7.5, 8 minus. Yeah.
Yeah, okay, that's fair. I think again I'd give it, which is classic whenever we fucking review anything, I feel like I give it a little bit less than yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah, I probably don't have as much stake in the series and the characters as yourself because I'm not as I didn't love the games as much as yourself, so I don't know whether that's maybe adds to my I'm less excited about the show and less excited about where it goes. This one I'm very interested to see if it will be a bit of a car crash like the game was. But I'd give this maybe a 6.5 out of 10. It's good. It's obviously, besides it's incredibly well made.
Yeah.
All really well shot, well acted. Again, as we always say, it's the character decisions and plot decisions which I'm not necessarily loving at the moment. And obviously the pilot episode of season 1 starts off with so much more of a bang. Yeah, if we're comparing the two, season 1 opener was fantastic, whereas we're back in the world.
It's just a continuation. Yeah. And also I think this is something that permeates the whole experience of watching the show, because with season 1 I was watching week by week and enjoying it and being like, please let it be just like the game. Like there were certain moments that I was waiting for. I remember when the last episode came and like the first half hour, I was like, if you don't do the moment with the giraffes, I'm gonna fucking riot. I'm gonna go into the street, just fucking put stuff on fire, because I need that moment to be replicated. And they did, and it was amazing, and I was very happy. So the experience of watching season 1 was more of like, please be like the game, so that people who haven't played the game can see how great the game was. Now it's a different experience, because week by week I'm gonna be like, let's see how you can improve this, let's see how
Yeah.
you can change this up, let's see how, oh, you've changed this, interesting, I guess this is gonna affect how this happens. So it's gonna be a very different experience watching episode by episode, but I'm really looking forward to it.
Yeah, and that alone is just really interesting of a topic, because there's so many of these IPs get made into films and TV shows, etc. And more often than not, the source material is completely changed, and everybody hates
Yeah.
it. And whereas this second season, everyone's like, "Oh my god, don't do the source material, please, do something else."
Yeah, it's so interesting. It's the opposite of what we usually get.
Yeah, yeah, and I'm sure they will take some of that into account. So we'll see. We'll try and do a episode by episode sort of review here, and if we miss one, we'll do two at once. But yeah, we'll keep giving you updates on our thoughts of The Last of Us season 2.
Yes.